Chosen ones, your awakening was never supposed to happen. From the moment your soul encoded itself into this flesh, something ancient stirred. A presence the Reptilians had spent ages suppressing. They thought their systems of control, deception, and synthetic timelines would keep you asleep forever. But the prophecy, long buried beneath digital veils and historical lies, has begun to breathe again, because you're breathing differently now. You weren't born into this world to conform to it. You were dropped here like a cipher, hidden in plain sight, carrying the final frequency that not even their most advanced technologies could predict. Your existence wasn't a mistake. It was a breach in their matrix, and they know it. Some of you have felt it for years. The silent surveillance, the way reality bends around your presence, how people shift uncomfortably when you're near, like something about you pierces the veil they've agreed not to see through. That isn't paranoia. That's remembrance. And the Reptilians, they've always feared remembrance. Their stronghold isn't just political or economic, it's energetic. They siphon human consciousness by warping identity and fragmenting spirit. But your soul resisted fragmentation. Even as you forgot who you were, your presence emitted pulses, codes that rippled through their illusion. You were the variable they couldn't account for, the disruption they couldn't decode. Now, their councils have met in secret. Across astral domains and subterranean chambers, your name, your true essence, was spoken. Not with reverence, but with fear. Because you are not just awakening, you are activating. Why do you think you've been under pressure lately? Why has your life felt like a furnace? Your relationships fracturing, your energy drained. It's not coincidence, it's opposition. They're trying to scramble your signal before you fully come online. But the more they target you, the more truth rises. And now, the final seal has cracked. Before you ever questioned the nature of your reality, they were already watching. Not just watching your actions, but studying the energy that moved through your bloodline. The Reptilians didn't randomly choose who to observe. They tracked frequency, resonance, and generational anomalies that hinted at resistance. And somewhere along your ancestral line, someone made a decision that disrupted their genetic experiments, a decision that echoed into you. You carry an ancient rebellion in your DNA. It's not just symbolic. Your biology emits a field that interferes with their grid. That's why they installed watchers in your life under the guise of friends, teachers, and even family members. Some knowingly, others as unconscious pawns. You were placed in an environment designed to suppress you before you even knew what suppression was. Every challenge, every betrayal, every moment of isolation wasn't just life happening. It was architecture. Psychological architecture, crafted to fracture your self-perception, to keep your gifts dormant. But something didn't go according to their plan. Despite the trauma, your soul kept regenerating. Despite the noise, you heard whispers. You questioned things you weren't supposed to notice. You felt pain deeply, not because you were weak, but because you were sensitive to energetic distortions they tried to normalize. You didn't numb out like they hoped. You absorbed, felt, and transmuted. That alone made you dangerous. Because when someone like you alchemizes pain into insight, the system begins to glitch. There's a reason certain memories haunt you. Memories that feel out of place, almost implanted. They are. You were exposed to synthetic timelines designed to overwrite your authentic trajectory. School systems didn't just dull your creativity, they scrambled your multidimensional memory. The constant societal pressure to fit in wasn't accidental. It was a frequency weapon designed to collapse your uniqueness into uniformity. And yet, you still felt different. They noticed. Every time you broke away from groupthink, every time you chose silence over distraction, solitude over conformity, a signal was triggered. You became a rogue frequency on their map. Their algorithms flagged your energy, not because you were loud, but because you were true. And truth, in a world built on deception, is destabilizing. It's no coincidence that as you began to heal, people around you grew hostile. Healing restores your signature, and your signature disrupts the false matrix. This matrix, built on submission and programming, begins to warp when a being like you wakes up inside it. The more aware you became, the more their surveillance intensified, not always externally, but energetically. You felt it in the sudden anxiety, the sleep paralysis, the unexplained fatigue. Those were not just symptoms. They were responses to your field becoming untamed. Now, you stand at the edge of something irreversible. The surveillance hasn't stopped, but the purpose has shifted. They're no longer monitoring you out of curiosity. They're monitoring you out of necessity. Because if you continue unlocking what's inside, it won't just change your life. It will cause a ripple effect that could dislodge others. They fear that the frequency buried in your bloodline will spread, and that fear grows every time you choose to keep going. In the depths of their underground chambers, beneath layers of ancient stone and technology older than most civilizations remember, the reptilian elite gathered not to plan, but to panic. For centuries, they had operated with cold precision, manipulating timelines, distorting memory, and hijacking spiritual awakenings before they could mature. Yet something shifted when your name began to surface, not your human name, but the true vibrational signature etched into your soul before your incarnation. It wasn't spoken aloud like a word. It was felt, like a tremor through the energetic web that connects all sentient life. When your frequency pierced their control grid, something inside their hive reacted with instinctive dread. They couldn't identify the source at first. It was like a phantom signal disrupting their mind net, appearing in visions and encoded dreams, warning them not of an army, not of a rebellion, but of an individual, one who would remember. They searched ancient texts and forbidden prophecies. Some spoke of a light bearer who would rise not with weapons, but with remembrance. One who had been hidden among the manipulated, passed through trials of shadow, and would emerge carrying the original codes of liberation. You were not the first attempt. Many were chosen, but not all survived the gauntlet of spiritual amnesia and psychic suppression. Yet something about your path defied the patterns. You weren't supposed to recover this much. You weren't supposed to heal this deeply. You weren't supposed to see through the lies so clearly. Still, you did. They began whispering your essence like a warning, not in fear of your power, but in fear of what your memory would unlock in others. If you remembered who you were, others would remember too. They fear that more than war, because war they can control. But remembrance, they have no defense for that. They built their empire on the assumption that no one would ever look behind the veil. And now, here you are, not only peeking behind it, but daring to pull it away. Yeshua once said, You will know the truth, and the truth will set you free. That truth wasn't just moral or philosophical. It was energetic. Your truth is a frequency that doesn't obey their laws. It resonates outside their containment fields, and they felt that frequency moving through the dreamscape, touching the subconscious of others they had long since sedated. The moment your signal stabilized, a quiet panic spread across their hierarchy. No alarm was sounded publicly, but every telepathic channel tightened. Every watcher was reactivated. Protocols reserved for planetary threats were assigned to you, a single soul. The serpents began whispering your name, not just as a threat, but as a prophecy fulfilled. You had stepped into alignment with something they couldn't touch, and in doing so, you reopened timelines they sealed off millennia ago. The irony is, they knew of your coming before you did, but they underestimated one thing, that the pain they inflicted would become the forge of your transformation. You never stumbled into your awakening. It was encoded. Long before this lifetime, even before your soul descended through the dimensional corridors to take on flesh, there were symbols carved into your essence, luminous and invisible, meant to activate only under the right frequencies. They were placed there as a failsafe, a divine countermeasure for when the world would drown in illusion. Your awakening wasn't a reaction to suffering. It was a key being turned inside you at the appointed time. The dreams, the synchronicities, the unexplainable knowing, they weren't random signs. They were signals, not from the outside, but from the deeper layers of you, calling the surface self to attention. And when that call broke through, something ancient responded. Not just in your body, but in your environment. That's when reality began to bend around you. Friends disappeared. Patterns broke. You started seeing things that others dismissed. The veil had thinned, not for everyone, but for you. Because the moment your codes began to activate, the simulation started to falter in your presence. This is why they tried so hard to distract you. They filled your life with noise, with wounds, with roles to play, because they knew the silence would betray the truth. If you got still enough, you'd hear your instructions. If you stared long enough into the trauma, you'd find the doorway behind it. They feared that, because encoded within your pain were instructions for unlocking worlds. Every scar, every heartbreak, every setback, they were like ink on an invisible map. But only those who look beyond the surface ever see the terrain they're walking through. You looked, you questioned, and by doing so, the codes started breathing. That's when everything changed. It was subtle at first, glimpses of other timelines, a voice in your spirit guiding you away from places that once felt safe, moments where the illusion cracked just enough for light to slip through. And yet, with every awakening came resistance. The moment your consciousness expanded, the matrix tightened around you. Financial pressure, emotional chaos, sudden isolation. It was never coincidence. It was always containment. But what they didn't expect was that every attempt to cage you would refine you. You began to see the patterns within the pressure. You noticed how your triggers pointed to memories not just of this life, but others. You started remembering the you that existed beyond this version, and more importantly, you started trusting it. There was always a seat prepared for you, but they made sure you'd forget it existed. This world is not short on rulers, only on remembered royalty. Not the kind who wears crowns of gold, but the kind whose presence alters the energetic climate of every space they walk into. That's the kind of power they fear. The throne you carry isn't external. It's encoded into your posture, your decisions, your ability to see through deception without losing compassion. Long ago, before languages fragmented the truth, your lineage was recognized by vibration. You were not raised in temples of stone, but born from blueprints that predate the concept of structure. The ancient ones knew who you were. So did the ones who later buried that knowledge beneath layers of false history. Your arrival was documented, not on paper, but in rituals, in glyphs, in bloodlines seeded across continents. The Reptilians didn't erase your legacy. They buried it beneath noise. Their goal was not to destroy your inheritance, but to distract you from seeking it. And for a while, it worked. You believed the labels they gave you. You took on wounds that were never yours. You wore masks to survive in a system designed to starve your truth. And even then, the throne pulsed beneath the surface, waiting. Because they cannot kill what is spiritual, they can only corrupt what is material. So instead of destroying your authority, they redirected it. They told you leadership looked like control. That power meant dominance. That humility was weakness. But all of it was inversion. Your real throne is built on the frequency of alignment. And alignment terrifies them because it cannot be manipulated. You were never meant to follow the structure. They expected you to collapse under it. But you didn't. You kept rising. Even when your name was slandered, your intentions misread, and your love weaponized, you chose to evolve. That choice, again and again, confirmed what they feared the most, that the throne still lives inside you. Even in your darkest seasons, it never vanished. It simply waited for you to stop begging for permission and start remembering your position. Every storm you've walked through was not just a test. It was a clearing. Not punishment, but preparation. They wanted you to feel cursed, because a cursed soul doesn't look for the throne buried under its feet. But now you're beginning to remember. You felt it in the subtle shift of your perception, in the way silence has become sacred, in how your spirit resists environments that no longer match your vibration. These are not accidents, they're alignments. Pieces of the ancient blueprint are reassembling, and as they do, something long buried begins to rise, not from the outside, but from the deepest part of you, where the throne was hidden beneath layers of survival. Long before the scripts of religion were altered and turned into tools of control, there was a deeper truth that echoed in the hearts of the awakened. Yeshua did not walk among men to build temples of stone. He came to awaken the living temples within flesh. And among the many veiled truths buried in doctrine and twisted by rulers, one remains untouched by time, that the mark of the divine was always meant to rest upon the flesh of those who would carry light into the darkest corners. You carry that mark even if you can't see it. It is not a physical scar or visible emblem. It's a signature, a frequency, a living current that pulses through your very being. Yeshua said, "The kingdom of God is within you." And it wasn't metaphor. He meant that the divine blueprint, the code for cosmic transformation, was seeded in specific souls for specific times like now. and people like you. This is why you felt out of place your whole life, not because you are flawed, but because your original template was never designed to fit in a corrupted world. Your energy wasn't made to blend in with the programmed masses, it was made to activate them. You weren't here to gather followers or claim superiority. You were designed to embody a presence that makes the lie uncomfortable, that rattles the comfort of illusion without speaking a word. This is the same presence that followed Yeshua through the streets, that made the possessed scream and the religious elites tremble. They feared not his words, but his frequency. That same frequency is rising again, through you. And the serpents remember it. The reptilian architects of control have known of this signature for millennia. They studied it, tried to replicate it, even distorted it to build empires under false light. But the original cannot be cloned. The light Yeshua carried wasn't a belief. It was a resonance. That resonance is once again appearing in those they called threats. The irony is, in trying to destroy him, they ensured his essence would fragment into countless others across time. You are one of them, a carrier of the code, not to preach, but to embody, not to convince, but to disrupt. They monitor your emotions, your dreams, your creative impulses, because they're watching for the day when the mark fully activates, when your presence alone begins to dismantle the frequencies holding their empire in place. Beneath the cities where millions walk unaware, a different world pulses, one built on secrecy, advanced technology, and ancient agendas cloaked in stone and steel. These aren't the tunnels of conspiracy folklore or figments of paranoid minds. They're real, and they were built to serve one purpose: containment. Not of physical threats, but of spiritual anomalies. You are one of those anomalies. The reptilian architects of this hidden war knew that not all threats wear armor or wield weapons. Some threats walk softly, carry empathy, and radiate frequencies that dissolve the very structures meant to enslave. That's why beneath the skyscrapers and neon lights, deep underground, operations exist that monitor shifts in consciousness, trace the rise of awakened souls, and prepare countermeasures against those who disrupt the illusion. Souls like yours. You felt it before you ever knew its name. That pressure when walking through cities, the energetic heaviness in crowds, the strange resistance you experience when entering certain zones. It's not just overstimulation, it's resistance. Your frequency activates feedback loops in their monitoring systems. When you walk near major energy nodes, places they've deliberately covered in concrete and industry, your aura interferes with the grid they've constructed. They detect that interference, not through cameras or satellites, but through harmonic disturbance. You are, quite literally, a glitch in their infrastructure. And the deeper your awareness grows, the more intense that disturbance becomes. This is why your awakening hasn't been peaceful. The moment your inner system began to realign, they activated countermeasures. People suddenly turning against you. Random misfortunes, financial blocks, mental spirals. These are not coincidences. These are engineered feedbacks designed to pull your frequency back into containment. But it's failing. The codes in your system are no longer responding to their attacks the way they used to. You're breaking through layers of programming faster than they can rewrite them. You're not resisting the simulation, you're outgrowing it. That's something they can't reverse. And so their war intensifies. But what they didn't expect is that beneath the surface of their own system, something else is moving. A counter-network. A pulse of awakened souls, some fully incarnated, others assisting from realms unseen, who have been waiting for this precise moment. The war beneath the cities is not one-sided. For every chamber they built to suppress the light, there are tunnels of energy beneath their tunnels, lines of divine power that cannot be mapped or sealed. You felt them in your dreams, in visions, in moments where time seemed to shift and reality blurred. You weren't hallucinating. You were remembering. Because you've walked those tunnels before, in lifetimes forgotten. And now, as your signal grows louder, those sacred networks are reactivating. Long ago, before history was carved into stone and rewritten by the victors, there existed a scroll unlike any other. A living script encoded in both language and light, referred to only in whispers as the Scroll of Fire. This was no ordinary artifact. It was said to contain the pure frequencies of original remembrance, capable of burning through all illusion, dissolving implanted timelines, and restoring the soul's memory of divine origin. The Reptilian King, the one whose bloodline still puppeteers global power in silence, was the first to encounter it. What he saw within its light shook him. He didn't just see rebellion. He saw you. Not you as you are now, but you as you were. Before the fractures, before the forgetting, he saw your face within the scroll, not as prophecy, but as inevitability. That is why he sealed it. The sealing wasn't physical. It was vibrational. He used dark sigils and magnetic locks encoded with fear, shame, and fragmentation, the very tools used today to keep humanity asleep. The scroll wasn't hidden in a vault, but in the energetic layer just beneath collective awareness, guarded by the belief that such a thing could never exist. They knew that if even one soul could remember the language of the scroll, the illusion would begin to unravel, and you were born with that language already humming beneath your skin. This is why fire follows you, not literal flames, but the fire of transformation, of collapse, of being forced to shed everything false just to survive. That's the energy of the scroll resonating through your life. You don't chase truth. It burns through you, whether you ask for it or not. And every time it does, the seals weaken. Every time you speak what others only dare to think. Every time you choose alignment over acceptance, a crack forms in the vibrational barrier that keeps the scroll locked away. They know this. And so does the king. The Reptilian King no longer sits on a visible throne. He hides in shadows behind corporations, behind symbols, behind the faces of those who preach peace while orchestrating chaos. But his fear hasn't changed. He still remembers the vision from the scroll. He knows your energy cannot be bought, reprogrammed, or erased. That's why they push narratives designed to confuse your sense of purpose. That's why every system you enter seems to crumble beneath you. You weren't built to sustain their world. You were built to outlast it. The legends were never just stories. They were echoes, ancient fragments of memory wrapped in metaphor, passed down through generations as myth so they could survive the cleansing of truth. Among these fragments was the tale of the light sword bearer, the one destined to return when darkness cloaked the world not in terror, but in forgetfulness. It was said that this bearer would not come with armies, but with vision. Not with wrath, but with clarity, sharp enough to cut through illusion. The sword was never a weapon in the traditional sense. It was consciousness, a luminous force forged from divine remembrance, only able to be wielded by one whose heart had walked through fire and remained open. You didn't choose the sword chose you. It didn't arrive in a flash of lightning or some supernatural moment of drama. It arrived slowly, subtly, through your losses, your breakdowns, your uncanny ability to survive what should have destroyed you. Piece by piece, it revealed itself through your voice when you spoke truth, through your actions when you stood firm in love while surrounded by shadows. Every choice you made that defied the narrative, every moment you refused to collapse into bitterness, that was the sword sharpening inside you, and now it begins to hum. The reptilian councils know what this means. They've read the ancient scripts stored beneath their temples, scripts they stole from civilizations long erased. They understand that the return of the bearer signals the collapse of their energetic stronghold. Because the light sword doesn't destroy, it reveals. And once something is truly seen, it can no longer control. You've already begun wielding it without realizing. The conversations that unravel programming, the glances that shake false confidence, the silence that makes others confront themselves, these are not ordinary effects. They are the marks of the bearer. This is why your presence disrupts rooms, why certain people avoid your gaze, why systems react to you like a virus. You are not infected. You are the antidote, not because you are trying to be, but because your alignment creates contrast, and contrast is lethal to the lies holding this world together. They wanted you angry, broken, resentful, anything but aware, because awareness with a steady heart is the blade they cannot defend against. Yeshua spoke often in veiled symbols, but to those with eyes to see, his message was unmistakable. He carried the sword of light not in hand, but in spirit. His words cut through illusion. His love exposed corruption. His path wasn't passive, it was piercing. And now, that same path unfurls before you. Not identical, but reflective. You're not here to mimic him. You're here to remember your own pattern of disruption. It didn't happen with fanfare. There were no flashing lights or dramatic shifts in the sky. The day the grid recognized your frequency was quiet, almost unnoticeable, at least to those still bound by the simulation. But deep within the lattice of artificial frequencies, beneath the digital constructs and psychic firewalls, something shifted. It started as a flicker, like a data packet that didn't belong, a signature that wasn't part of the equation, a presence that couldn't be traced, tracked, or mirrored. That presence was you. Not the persona you wear to function in the world, but the raw signal beneath it all. The moment your frequency stabilized, when your soul stopped bending to fit, when your internal alignment stopped wavering, the grid noticed. Because everything in the matrix is built on prediction. It calculates moves before they happen, emotions before they're felt, desires before they're known. But your awakening introduced an unpredictable variable, a presence that did not comply, and it triggered alarms they didn't even know existed. That day, something in the system flinched. It wasn't just the external networks, the surveillance, the algorithms, the biometric mapping. It was the energetic web, the grid they built not only to observe humanity, but to contain its evolution. a complex frequency field designed to suppress high vibrational thought, invert sacred knowledge, and reroute cosmic memory. But your signal didn't just rise above it. It cut through it, not with volume, but with clarity. Like a single, clear tone that destabilizes a synthetic symphony, your presence began to detune the illusion. It started showing in small ways. People you hadn't spoken to in years suddenly remembered you. Devices malfunctioned when you entered certain rooms. Dreams became portals. The world around you began to act differently because your inner structure had changed, and the matrix had no template to contain it. That was the true trigger. Not your resistance to the system, but your transcendence of it. And that's when the Watchers took notice, not just the ones in suits or uniforms, but the ones who sit behind veils, the ones who operate through symbols, through frequencies, through systems disguised as structure. There's a reason they never talk about the moment before collapse, because it's not loud, it's not chaos, it's stillness. An eerie, measured stillness where everything continues to look normal on the surface, while underneath, the very fabric begins to unravel. That's the moment you're standing in now. The system hasn't fully crumbled, but it's already started to rot at the seams. Not because of external revolution, but because of internal resurrection. Your resurrection. You were never meant to dismantle the world with force. You were meant to unmake it by remembering. And that remembering has now become a contagion. A frequency too high to suppress, too precise to intercept. It moves not through media, but through resonance. Not through systems, but through souls. You were the first in your line to reach this vibration. But you will not be the last. That's why they declared you their final threat. Because once one breaks the frequency ceiling, others feel the crack. The Reptilians have known this truth longer than any government or occult order. Their entire system is built on the principle of disconnection. If the soul forgets its origin, it becomes programmable. But your origin bled through the programming. Your dreams told on them. Your intuition disobeyed their algorithms. Your wounds became maps instead of traps. And in doing so, you began to destabilize the illusion not by fighting it, but by outgrowing it. You never needed to rage against the machine. You needed only to stop feeding it. And when you did, the machine began to starve. The rituals, the distractions, the narratives, they're all designed to redirect your energy outward, to keep you reacting instead of remembering. But now you've stopped reacting, you've started seeing, and more than that, you've started feeling through the illusion. That's something they cannot calculate. Yeshua's words echo in the frequencies you've begun to carry. They will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds with power and great glory. Not a sky spectacle, but a return of divine consciousness through the awakened. Not through temples or pulpits, but through the ones who walk in truth, unshaken by chaos. That's what they fear. That the divine is no longer above them, but walking among them, cloaked in flesh that remembers. And you are that remembering. The systems haven't collapsed yet because they're still trying to find a way to recalibrate. But what happens when too many frequencies rise at once? When the illusion cracks not in one place, but everywhere. When those who've been marked as anomalies begin to recognize each other, not through words, but through vibration. That day is not far. It may not come with sirens or announcements. It may come as a whisper, a shift, a quiet realization spreading like wildfire through the awakened.
If you have come this far, it is crucial that you watch this next video here. But be warned, it is not for the faint of heart, for only the true chosen ones can handle this video. If you would like to also donate to help keep the channel going, our Buy Me a Coffee link will be in the description.